All right, Dream Think Doer. I don't always start episodes with a question, but I'm going to do that today because we got a special guest. Let me ask you, what if the key to your next breakthrough, that thing that you want in your career or your life, what if it wasn't fixating on your weaknesses, but instead actually doubling down on your strengths? Let me let that just sit there for a second. I can tell you this week's guest is John Coyle, and he has lived this truth in ways that will inspire you, will stretch you, will help you to think about success and innovation and how to design your life in a whole new way. Today, John is one of those people who wears many hats, and it seems like has had like 5 different lives. He's an Olympic medalist, Fortune 500 exec, award-winning author, Stanford educated designer, and an Emmy-winning sports analyst. Like so many different things. Wildly. He was a Renaissance man, right? But one of the most powerful chapters of his story comes from when he quit the U.S. Olympic speed skating team. He walked away. And that's because their system was really focused on trying to fix his weaknesses. And under that plan, he wound up going backwards fast. So he quit and started to work on this radical idea of what if he could design a training plan and really a life that was focused on his strengths instead of his weaknesses. And what's beautiful about that is he leaned on what he had learned in the Stanford Design School and what he understood as design thinking, and he applied that to his sport. And a year later, he came back to not only win the U.S. trials, but break every national record and set a new world record in the process. So I'd say it worked. Today, I'm excited to talk with John about how to apply these same principles to designing our life and our careers, especially when you're navigating change, feeling stuck, or you're just simply ready to live and lead with more intention. So I'm excited for this conversation. Let's get to it. John, welcome to Dream Think Do, buddy.
Thanks, Mitch. Glad to be here.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, like we were talking about it before I hit record, speed skating is one of the most fascinating sports to watch because, as we talked about, it is the only sport that I know of that involves skating on ice at a high speed, but it also feels like everybody's carrying 2 switchblades, right? Like, what is that like to be on the ice? Especially, I mean, you did short track. I mean, what is that experience like?
Well, I think the closest that people will sort of experience is flying in a jet plane, and particularly, sort of metaphorically flying in in an air fighter jet.
Right. Yeah. We're
Because you
talking
enter
G
the
forces
corner,
here.
yeah, you enter a corner going 33 miles an hour that way, and you exit 2 seconds later going 33 miles an hour the other way, which is 0 to 66 in 2 seconds, which no car on the planet can do, not even the new Tesla. So when you break the math down to your switchblade analogy, it is as follows for a 165-pound skater. It's 3G, so it's triple your body weight, and you're never on 2 legs at once. So it is the equivalent of a 500-pound one-legged squat from deeper than 90 degrees while leaned over at 72 degrees while traveling 33 miles an hour on an 18-inch long razor blade headed directly at a wall with a group of people trying to kill you.
Well, that's exactly right. Like everybody has the same goal, right? And I remember I always say that I do enough research to stay just this side of stalker laws. But I love diving into your history and your story. And I saw one interview where you were walking an NBC person through the Olympics. You were being, interviewed about the Olympics at the Olympic Games at a venue, and you went in depth on the sharpness of that blade on everyone's feet. And the commentator that was with you was just like shocked at how freaking dangerous this sport is. And yet you chose to do it daily for a very long time.
18 years on the national team.
That's amazing. So I referenced it in your intro, but let's talk about this. So you had risen to the ranks of, I believe you were 12th in the world, started to work with the Olympic team, earned that spot. But as they started to focus on your weaknesses, that just didn't work for you. And so you chose to walk away. That had to be an incredibly difficult decision because I'm guessing everybody around you was like, this is your shot. You have to follow the way they're doing it. Like, what was that like to say, I'm going to take a pass on the way you guys are doing it and do it differently?
It was hard. I will say I had great parents who supported my decisions.
That's a big
Uh,
deal.
Without that, I don't know I could have done it. But yeah, I walked away from the team after 2 years. I was 12th in the world while going to college full time at Stanford. Like that's not that easy to do with
That's
no.
not. Yeah,
Yeah.
demanding load, right? Like this wasn't community college, nothing
Right.
against community college, but this is like you were in a very demanding program and yet you were also on the Olympic team. It's incredible.
So I thought I would go from 12th to 6th to first in the 2 years I had to prepare after moving in with the Olympic team. They put me in a program to fix my weaknesses, which are, it turns out, many and varied. Um, and, it just broke me down. So I went from 12th to 34th to not even making the team 2 years later. And, I was so humiliated, honestly.
Yeah,
I put all that effort and time in, support from sponsors and my parents and other people. And then to just not even finish in the running was humiliating. And so, but I did harken back to design thinking. It's a method of problem solving at Stanford. And the core of it always is, are you solving the right problem?
mm,
Most often in life, if we're stuck not seeing progress, it's because we framed the problem wrong.
mm.
And once you get the problem right, well, then you can kind of get some progress. And so I was like, wait a minute, I used to be good. Maybe Maybe I'll just train on my own again and leverage some of the stuff I learned over here, but double down on my strengths. And so that's what I did. Just trained by myself for an entire year, showed up to the exact same year, exact same competition. It's not an Olympic year, but the structure is the same for the World Championships trials, and same people, same structure. And the first race back in a sport where hundreds determine first from second. Usually I broke the US record by 5.5 seconds and the world record by over a second and went on to set every record, as you mentioned. And so it wasn't incremental improvement.
Right.
It was a complete breakthrough. And I've seen it happen now multiple other times in my life when people finally figure out what their superpower is. That's really important. Only then do they get to put on the cape. But when they do, it's not,
Yeah.
a little bit better. It's like life is vastly different.
Vastly different. So how did you figure out which question to ask, which problem to focus on?
It really did come back to what I had thought at the time was a local coach, volunteer coach, my coach named Mike Walden, who subsequently is now quite famous around the world. But he was an unpaid volunteer coach, but his advice always was raise your strengths, double down on your strengths, design around your weaknesses, don't try to fix them.
Hmm.
So moving off of that sort of platform into the weakness focused platform, it's very common in not just sports, right? In academics and the
In
workforce.
corporate, absolutely. It's like, hey, fix those problems, fix those weaknesses. And yeah, absolutely.
Your performance plan is just a list of weaknesses, right? Like,
Yep.
or skill gaps. Skill gaps are fine. You fix those and move on. But true weaknesses are not fixable.
Yep.
And as this adage goes, what the world doesn't want from you is to get slightly better at what you're mediocre at. What the world wants from you is to get amazing at something you're great at. And by the way, when you achieve some breakthrough performance, even in a narrow area, the world doesn't care about the other stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's
They don't
exactly
care.
right. They might embrace it and celebrate it, right? Like, oh, they just put that in well, he's just quirky, right?
Right.
Right? That's
100%.
absolutely true. That's absolutely true. Now, I want to talk about how did you do that, but I also, with Dream Think Do, I was love to talk about what's going on in your head, what's going on in your heart. And I know you're also a fan of neuroscience and how the brain works. In that year where you were on your own, you were focusing on your strengths. My guess is you were figuring out, hey, this seems to be working. But, when you're on a track by yourself, it's hard to know whether you're running fast or not. Right. So,
Right.
how did you stay focused, stay inspired, kind of continue to believe in this dream on the backside of not only were you wondering, is this working, but also kind of that I'm sure you had, like you said, humiliation. You had some residue for not making the team, all that stuff. How did you have to lean into your thinking to make sure that like you could stay moving forward on this goal and this dream?
Great questions. It's like you were there.
I
It was
just know how my brain would be, and my brain would be beating myself up, and that's where that's where that wrestling match starts, right?
really two things that kept me going. First was I just liked doing the kinds of workouts I was doing. I loved doing
Mm.
squats. I hated doing 16-mile runs and 100-mile bike rides, which they were having me do for the previous 2 years.
Interesting.
So I just liked doing, heavy weights, big jumps. I like doing sprints on the bike. I like doing sprints on the track. I also changed my track. Everybody in the world was skating a very wide track to diminish those G forces. And
Ah.
as an anaerobic athlete, I was like, if I could dive into each corner, it's going to be a bigger hit on the G forces, but it requires a huge burst of power for 2 to 3 seconds, the only thing in the world I'm actually good at. So, so I didn't necessarily skate any faster. I
Yeah,
went less far.
interesting.
The other thing that happened, so I like the way that felt. We call it the pivot. I liked pivoting each corner. I like diving at each corner. It felt great. It's more dangerous, but I liked it.
Yeah,
But I had no idea if it was working. I had nobody to give me. I wasn't
right.
I'm self-timing myself. The other thing that happened was an external force that could have gone either way, but a couple of like maybe 6 weeks into training on my own in Milwaukee, the national team, the Olympic team was in like Placid, and I was still officially a team member, and they didn't like it.
Hmm.
There was a lot of
Hmm.
rumblings. The coaches didn't want me to go on there in the first place. Then the
Yep.
skaters, the mentality, which is odd, but they were like, "Why does he get to do his own thing?" Like,
Yeah, yeah, wait, why is he doing anything different than we're all doing?
right,
Yep,
and we're suffering over here, and he's probably having fun.
right.
Um, and so to smooth over some of the ruffled feathers, I drove 18 hours from Milwaukee to Lake Placid to do a week-long training camp with the team, and I did the first workout for a couple hours with the team, and right at the end of the workout, my coach, pseudo former coach, skated over to me, and he's like, "I'm sorry, John, the team and coaches have voted you have to go home." So my own team voted me off the island.
Whoa.
And I was so angry and humiliated, like, so fierce. I got in the car right away. I drove 18 hours.
Yeah, I happy to leave then. Thank you very much. Did he give you rationale? Like, what was their reasoning for voting you off the island?
The national team program is for national team members. You have decided to go on your own, so you can't just float in and float out. You got to be all in or all out. So I'm like, all right, I'm all out. The cool part about this is, people always say it takes a lot of, follow through and to be able to be on an Olympic team, but they make you do everything, right? They make you get up, they make you eat, they make you warm up, they
Yep,
make you down, they make you stretch, they make you do everything. To do that on your own, every day I had to go to the rink by myself, wake myself up, put the pads on the ice,
yep,
put water on the ice, put the cups out, train, take everything down. I had missed a couple practices already, right? Because nobody's going to yell at me.
right.
After the Lake Placid incident, I every morning would get up. I would face east to Lake Placid, give the single finger salute, and
You guys just lit a fire. You
I was
guys
just
just
pissed
lit a
every
fire.
day, and I never missed a practice after that.
I bet you did not.
Nope, and
Thank you very much, team. I appreciate it. Wow, that is incredible. Now, I will say though, my hat's off to you because there's a lot of people that would drive home from that and say, "Well, I'm done with the sport. That would just must be the end." And
yeah,
you were like, "No, I'm doubling down. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna prove it to myself, prove it to everybody else." That's
yeah.
amazing. What was that like to then go to that the next trial? Because I would imagine, you got to wonder how did everybody else do in this year? All that stuff. Like, what were the mental gymnastics of going to that next trial?
Well, it was in Saratoga Springs, New York. I got there 7 days before the race. The day I arrived, I got the flu.
Oh, wow.
And not the 24-hour dealio, like the real deal.
Like, everything's leaving your body in every way
Everything for 5
possible.
days. Like, I didn't skate. I lost, like,
Wow.
11 pounds. I was feverish and throwing up and just completely bedridden for 5 days. The 6th day, I got on the ice, did 3 laps, threw up, and got off. So now it's the first day of the world team trials, same thing as Olympic trials, and I'm sure I'm going home. Like,
Yeah,
the fir the first race is 100 people, and 16 stay, and 84 go home. And it's an all-day thing. It's run as a time trial with just one other person. It's not pack style like all the other races. It's just literally to separate the wheat from the
just
chaff.
grind it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's figure out the top 16 fastest for this 1,000 meters, and everybody else goes home. So I'm lined up against the guy that won it the year before in the Olympic trials, and I was like, I mean, he's probably gonna catch me. Like, and if he does, I'm going home. But if he doesn't catch me, maybe I'll make top 16. Maybe I'll feel better tomorrow.
Yeah.
So they shoot the gun, and I'm just focused on this really tight track I had been practicing for the last year, and I felt okay. I didn't feel as sick as I had the day before. And about halfway through the race, 4.5 laps in, I noticed the first of a couple odd things happening. I was catching him. And
Wow.
in my head, I'm like, well, God, he must be out of shape because I am
Yeah, what's going on here? Yeah.
sorry, JP. Like, what's wrong with you? And then
Sorry, not really sorry.
they make him swing wide. I go inside of him, and I don't really give it much thought. And then there's a couple laps to go, and I noticed the second strange thing is it had gotten quiet in the hockey arena. Now there's 400 people in a pretty tight area.
Yeah.
Generally, a lot of noise, people talking, coaches yelling, like whatever. And it got quiet. So I looked up for the first time. I hadn't looked up at all. And there were faces pressed against the glass of the hockey rink. Now, the time trial is quite boring. Usually nobody's watching this because it's just like, you get your time after
Right.
you.
A couple of guys on the ice spread out. Yeah, absolutely.
So I thought that was odd. So I decided to look at the lap times for the first time. I hadn't looked. And they're given in splits of tenths. So they don't give them
Yeah.
9 10 seconds for the lap. They just give 0.2 is what it said. And I was like, 10.2, God, I hope I'm not going that slow. I'll never make the cut. 9.2, I can't skate that fast. So clearly that's wrong. I don't know what this means. I'll just keep going. So I finished the race, and there's some bustling around in the coach's box where all the coaches stand. And then my pseudo former coach has jumped out on the ice with his stopwatch, and I'm coming at him at 30 miles an hour. So I'm trying to steer around him, and he's staying in the way. And he looks angry. He's holding the stopwatch. And as I skid to a stop, because I have to, because otherwise I'm going to run into him, he's like, Coyle, what the hell have you been doing? And I'm about to burst into tears because I'm like, I know I'm going home now.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And you're
So
just coming off the flu, for crying out loud. Yeah.
courage, and I was like, I have been sick. And he says, no, you don't understand. You just broke the US record by 5.5 seconds. You just broke the world record by over a second. And here's the funny part. I rarely tell this as part of the story. I said nothing. In my head, I'm like, oh my God, I only did 8 laps, not 9. I'm sure I didn't go far enough. They're going to figure it out. So I leave, I get off the ice, and I go find a parent that's got a video camera, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, take a look at that last
Yeah.
race.
Can we just double check this real quick?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, thank God, 9 laps. Okay. So
Unreal. Isn't that
as a
amazing
kid,
how your brain couldn't even fathom it? So you've just assumed you hadn't done it right? Like, that is incredible.
nobody
That is
moves the bar 5 seconds. Like, that doesn't happen in my sport. It's a
right.
10th year, 100th there. And that's not even like my good race, the 500 meters is my good race. So
That is incredible. What was that level of satisfaction when you actually figured out you'd done the right amount of laps? What was that feeling, especially of going off on your own, having been rejected, coming
right,
back, redemption? What was that feeling? Because how old are you at that point?
25.
Okay, so you're 25, right? Like, yeah, what is that emotion as a 25-year-old?
Well, there's a couple things that happen. One is, this is true in real life. There's nothing like success to make you warmly welcomed back. So now the coach is like,
That is a beautiful. Yes.
come for
Yes.
want to come for a week, come for dinner.
John, you're amazing. You're beautiful. Oh my gosh, we've always wanted you. Yeah.
I'm just no longer the ugly duckling. And but the other like really awesome feeling, you probably talk about in your show at times, the flow state.
Yep.
So getting in the peak performance zone after I recognized that I really was skating that fast and well, like I can remember the next races were the 500s, and I just took off from the gun, and I was completely in the flow state. And I'd finish and look back, there wasn't anybody there. Like that's not typical in my sport.
Yeah.
So it felt really great to just really skate so fast and to feel, so good about taking that risk. And there's a German cyclist I always borrow his quote. His name is Jens Voigt. But they asked him, how did you do 19 Tours de France? How'd you come back from your injuries? Blah, blah, blah. And his answer was self-belief beyond all reason.
I love that. Yes, please, 2 scoops. Oh my gosh. That's incredible. That's incredible. So how did again, we could talk for 4 hours. I do want to get to design thinking because I know that was at the core of how you looked at training and now how you work with corporate audiences and clients and things to help them apply that and to really pull out and draw out strengths with the people that you work with. But I got to ask, how did the program change because of your approach? Was the program impacted by your approach
It was,
afterward?
the program up until then, from 1980 on, honestly, up until that year, so another 15 years later, whatever it was designed for one person. It was designed to
Mm,
replicate the single greatest skater of all time, a guy named Eric Heiden,
yeah,
who was not human, right?
not human.
Not a human being. And so, if you want to
His
win like Eric,
legs look like they were thicker than my waist for crying
they
out loud.
32
Like,
inches. So yeah, probably right there. And well, so the belief system was, if you want to win like Eric, you got to train like Eric. And so they designed a training program to replicate Eric's, and there aren't very many of those in the world. And what it really did was it spat out all of the sprinters. So it was a really heavy endurance focused training
interesting.
program. And short track, fast twitch muscles were just by and large, we got spat out of the program because we would get overtrained and then convert our muscle to type 2B from type 2A from type 2B. And then we lose the only thing so, in those 2 years, by the way, so we do these tests, right? SAT and ACTs of sports.
Yeah.
The VO2 max is your endurance test. It's how much oxygen can you process. So we worked on my VO2 because I had the lowest of the team by a wide margin when I first tested. So I scored a 52. And then a year later, after working 100-mile bike rides, 60-mile runs, endurance squats, I scored a 52. And then another year later of doing the same program, I scored a 52, which goes to say that if you have a true weakness, it's probably not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And then the only test I had a decent place in was something called the Wingate or max power. So I had the highest max power my first year per kilogram of anybody on the team by a pretty good margin. Which was 1740 watts. That dropped to 1460, dropped to 1240 by my second year. So I killed
Wow.
the only thing.
A training in this Eric Heiden kind of way
And this is,
actually took
I
your
think this,
strength and
I think
depleted
this is
it.
for everybody in real life. So if you're
Wow.
a direct, honest person, for example, which is a huge, I love that superpower, by the way. Like people that
Right?
tell the truth all the time. If you know they're going to tell the truth, then you can lean on them to tell the truth. It's a lot of people don't do that, and
Yep.
but they're also probably blunt and rude, right?
Right?
And so you fix being blunt and rude, and then you're probably no longer direct and honest, and that's how bad decisions are made.
Yep.
Right? You're a creative, disorganized person. Almost all creative people are disorganized. Some aren't. So you work hard to be really organized, and then you're just less creative. And
Yep.
it seems to work that way for all of the great strengths out there. If you fix the corresponding weakness, you just destroy the strength. You don't even get anywhere with the
Yeah.
weakness itself. So this is where environment matters. I'll stop talking about this in a second, but if you're in a position, in a job, in a hobby, in a relationship where your strengths are not valued and your weaknesses are constantly pointed out, you're in the wrong place.
Yep.
I had a teacher raise her hand in one of my talks. Rarely happens when you have over 100 people in the room, right?
Right?
And I'm like, don't tell me, but I'm going to go direct, honest, blunt, rude. She's like, yes. How did you know? I'm like, because nobody raises their hands. What?
That's exactly right. The
I just don't.
behavior outs your strength. Yeah.
She's like, I don't think my strengths are valued where I work. And I'm like, well, what do you do? She's like, I'm a private school parochial teacher in Minneapolis. And I'm like, no,
Mm.
they're not. It's the
Yep.
nicest state in the union. You're dealing with little kids in a highly religious circumstance in the nice, like, no, boarding school in New York. They will value you there.
Yeah.
And this thing is, I was saying that, like, there was a chuckle, right, from the audience. 7 or 8 years later on LinkedIn, I get a note. Moved to New York, highly valued, love giving kids shit.
Thanks, John. Needed it. Yep. I love that. I love that. So let's swing this back over because
Yeah.
again, you guys went on to win silver, like have incredible success. You're an Olympic athlete, all of those things. And then you've come back and really again applied it in a number of areas in your life, but also helped major organizations apply this strength-based design thinking approach. So when you come back and now use this in a corporate space, talking with leaders and their teams, all of those things, how do you translate? What are some of the most important things you've learned from this part of your journey, but also all that you've learned in regards to design thinking to the person that's saying, "All right, I think I am not in the right environment," or "I think I have been focused on my weaknesses, not my strengths."
Right.
How do you get that person started on and focusing on the right problem?
Well, I always say this often that when you feel like you have no choices left, it just means they're really hard,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But everybody that's listening to this has something called agency.
Yep.
You know, but we forget. We trade away our agency. We can't see it when it's right in front of us because it's hard stuff, right? Like
Yep.
if you don't like your job and you've been there more than 2 years, you need a new job. Like
Yeah.
that's just facts.
Yep.
The
Probably
the
not gonna change, right?
is
Unless you do.
and no,
Yep.
and it doesn't necessarily mean quitting your actual job. I quit my job 4 times in 8 years at the same company. I didn't just up and quit, right? I after 2 years of being an operations manager in marketing,
Yep.
that's a detail oriented, high follow through, low creativity job. Exactly not my strong suit. I said to my boss, I don't know that I'm a real fit with this. Do you think there's a fit over on the brand team, the creative team? And he's like, well, not right now, but that makes sense. And so,
Yeah.
a few months later, we moved me to the brand team. But then that turns out that's a people management job. I thought it was going to be, creating slogans and jingles or whatever, right?
Right, the
Well,
creative part, right? Yeah.
agencies do that. You're just managing them. So I did that for, 18 months. And I'm like, this is really not my thing. I want
Yeah.
strategy, big picture thinking. So I go and I asked to move to the strategy team. So they put me on the strategy team. And that was a better fit. It wasn't terrible,
Yeah.
but it wasn't creative. It was really more analytical and
Yep.
rigorous and
Yep.
to that. And I was like, you know
Data,
what?
data, data. Yep.
I go to
Yes.
the now my boss is now the CMO, and I was like, "Hey, we talk innovation here all the time, but we don't do it. I think we should create a role, a head of innovation role, and I want it." And 3 months later, they created the role, and then I
Wow.
finally did what I was meant to do at that company.
Yeah. I
But I didn't quit, right?
Yep. Well, I love that. I love that because that is such an important conversation to have because I think a lot of people, when they feel that frustration or they feel that thing that you were just talking about, like, I am not getting to work in my strengths, or they sure seem to be focused on my weaknesses. And so they think the one and only solution is to quit.
Yeah,
And that can certainly be an option,
of
but
course.
it is not the only option, and I love that because I'm guessing, knowing you, you continue to bring excellence. Maybe as you knew, "Hey, I'm not in a great fit job," you didn't just check out and kind of turn in the least amount of effort. You still brought excellence because in order for you to then switch over to the brand team, in order for you to, like, be worth creating a whole role for, you must have continued to deliver even in those situations where you weren't getting to fully work in your strengths.
Yeah, there were bright spots, of course, but, if the total role was, 5% bright spots and 95% grunt work, that's not a place, that's not the
Yeah,
fit.
but I'm
Uh,
guessing you were still working hard, right? You were still hitting your numbers, you were still doing the job, but
well,
you just knew, like,
the thing
"Hey."
here, people always ask me, how do you know when you should quit?
Yeah.
You can't know if you're good at something in 6 weeks. You can't.
Yep. It's a good point.
You can't know probably in 6 months.
Yep.
But 10 years is too long,
That's exactly
right?
right.
So I think
That's absolutely if it ain't better. Yeah,
I think there's like an
absolutely.
18 months to 2-year rule. If you're pursuing
Yeah.
something for 18 months, 2 years, and you're not seeing much progress at that point, you're probably in the wrong environment. And that
Yep.
means time to, change your approach, get a different job within the company, go get a new job.
Yep.
Um, but you can't know in 6 weeks. So you got to put in the effort to find out if that's a skill gap that you just had to pick it up and you can move forward, or it's a
Right.
true weakness.
I love that. So, when you talk with folks about, being able to move more into, operating from their strengths, all of those things, what are some of those first steps that you recommend? Because we have a lot of rock stars that
Yeah.
listen to Dream Think Do. They are high achievers. They are successful people, and oftentimes they are still delivering at high levels, even though maybe on the deep down, right? They know either they're not in their sweet spot anymore, because that can happen, right? Sometimes we can have so much experience and grow so much that the thing that was a good fit no longer is a good fit. And sometimes, like I know in my story in pharmaceuticals, I got promoted into a bad fit job. Wasn't a
Mhm.
bad job, it's just a bad fit for me,
Right.
and that woke me up to say, "Whoa, I'm not operating in my zone of genius. I'm not operating in my strengths anymore." So I had to kinda course correct, and for me, it was going and experimenting with entrepreneurial endeavors outside my job. Still doing my job, still hitting my numbers, still delivering, but going and experimenting outside. So, what do you recommend for that person that's like, "Hey, they're committed to still doing a good job, but maybe either they can't or they won't just quit, right? Which is not always the best thing.
Yeah.
What are some of those first steps you recommend for somebody to say, "Hey, I wanna move back into my strengths?"
Well, you have to know what they are. I'll loan you
Yeah.
and your audience my cocktail hour question. I do ask this. This isn't. I'm not being facetious. I often ask people, "What are you best at?"
Mm.
80% of the time, you get deer in the headlights. They don't know.
Yep.
They'll take they'll guess. They'll give you some generalization. Communication. Okay, to whom about what? Like,
Yeah, right. Exactly. What does that even mean? Yeah.
right? Are you good with a big audience, a storyteller, narrator? You're better with a medium audience where you get people to, interact with you. You're better with a
Yeah.
small audience where you get people to bond with each other. You're better as a listener, a coach, a challenger, one-on-one. Like these are all different. They're all
Right.
fall communications, right? And so getting dialed into what your strengths are it's no small task. And there's some blunt tools out there you should start with. You can do Myers-Briggs, you can do StrengthsFinder, you can do Forte, you can do Colby. You should.
Yep.
Then when you've got the courage enough, you're going to ask 10 people you know well, what are my top 5 strengths and top 5 weaknesses? You'll probably find out they're facets of the same thing. You won't like the
Yeah.
first list, you'll like the second one, but it's fine. Get over it. And then you just do more of that, right? Just
Yep.
do more of that. If I may, I'll tell you a quick story
Yeah.
about sort of applied in skating and then back in business. We go to the Olympics. I'm the anchor skater. I'm the fastest one. We're going to skate you last because that's what you do, except we're skating on figure skating ice, which is slow and soft.
Right.
We switch every day with figure skating, and somebody my size, my weight, I was struggling. So I was no longer the fastest person on the team for that environment. So second fastest guy, also bigger guy, third fastest guy, medium sized guy, smallest guy on the team, slowest nominally, also best endurance. And we knew it would be a race of attrition. This was not a high speed,
Mm.
cop chase kind of thing. This was going to be a race of attrition. So we anchored our slowest man for the final legs of the relay. Thank God we did. He passes away from bronze to silver, almost caught gold, had another half lap. We would have had that too.
Yep.
Point being, we hire for diversity of experience, background, and experience, and then we make them do the job the same way.
Right.
Why don't you? So, similar story. I go into industry. I've got 8 marketing managers working for me. They all had the same job descriptions. They were working regionally, 2 per region, 4 regions, right? Same JD, same everything. Medium performing team. After reading StrengthsFinder and doing some looking within myself, I realized, oh my God, I have 2 analytics. I have 2 program manager get stuff done types. I've got 2 creative people and I've got 2 people.
Yeah.
All right, people are going to go do sponsorships. Creative people are going to work with the ad teams. Analytics are going to do the research, and the program managers are going to make sure everybody else does their jobs. And we went
Yeah.
through the roof within weeks. Like everybody got to do what they liked. It was technically unfair, but that's not their job description. Nobody
Right.
complaining, and neither were my bosses, and it fundamentally works. When you get people to do the work they love their work, and they show up early, stay late, and they get the job done.
Absolutely, and I always say that one of the greatest gifts you can give somebody is to actually see them,
Right.
right? Which means seeing their strengths, identifying like, everybody has strengths and everybody has weaknesses, but you're exactly right. A lot of people are in the roles they're in because they were the right person for the job, but not necessarily because of their strengths or because of the time or whatever, right? So I love that you had the guts. It goes back to, having the guts and courage to leave the team and go train in a way that focused on your strengths to be able to do the same thing with your own team. Cause I would imagine that took some courage because everybody got hired for different roles at different times, all of those things. You probably had peers that were a little ruffled, like your Olympic teammates that you might have had peers in that leadership role that were like, wait, we can't do that. Can we do that? Is that legal? All those things, right? So a part of that is being willing to offend sometimes to find the right solutions. I love it. For the I know for folks that maybe have heard of, the Stanford program, and design thinking, talk to us a little bit about that. As far as what was it like to go through that program, and how has that impacted kind of, again, the way that you look at life, the way that you look at pretty much everything?
Yeah, I was so lucky. I mean, I was lucky to go through the product design program at Stanford for one reason only, which is I failed Math 202. So I go into
Talk about weaknesses getting you into the right spot as well, right? Like, that's amazing.
I went in as my parents and I planned for me to become a mechanical engineer. So I was taking that core. Turns out I was the dumbest kid pretty much at the school. Uh, I saw these letters on my report card that I had never seen before, thing
Right?
C and a D. And so I struggled, and I made it through my freshman year. And then sophomore year, I had to take this thing called Math 202, linear algebra, and I failed the course. I failed the midterm so horribly. I got a 13%. Not that that's still emblazoned in my skull. Uh,
Wow. But hey, you go bold. Like, no matter what you do, you go all the way, right? Like, that's pretty impressive.
I mean, the professor's writing the curve on the board, and he's like, lowest score 43, high score 87. So 77 to 87 is an A. And I was like raising my hand. I'm like, never mind. I am not going to embarrass myself by letting everybody know I not only had the lowest score, but a lowest score by, 1/3. Um,
Oh, shoot.
so, but here's where we get bad as humans at predicting our future state of happiness.
Yeah.
Yes, we're really bad at predicting future emotions, actually. My prediction, my belief, strong belief was if I fail this test, I'm going to feel like a loser. I'm going to be
Yep.
so upset. I'm going to cry my eyes out. I'm going to have to call my parents and tell them I can't be an engineer. I'm going to switch
Yep.
majors. I'm going to be a complete and total failure. I couldn't have been happier walking out of that class. I'm like,
Wow.
I'm not going to do that. I don't have to do that. I can't do that. I won't do that. I'm not doing that. I am free to do something else, and I will do something else. And I am not going back in that room again. And so I switched to the closest adjacent major, which was product design. It just didn't require Math 202. And 2 weeks later, I get David Kelly, the founder of Stanford's D School, as my academic
Wow.
advisor, who was Steve Jobs' right-hand man for 15 years,
Right.
creating the least the Macintosh and the iPhone. I mean, how much better could life have gotten from failing, right? Like, not a lot.
That's
Life gives you
incredible.
guardrails sometimes. You should pay attention.
So what do you think what allowed you, instead of walking out of that classroom with the 13% in your mind, what allowed you to say, "Woohoo, I'm free," as opposed to, "Oh, I'm a failure"? What do you think? What was a part of that, so that you could identify it and have that perspective?
And I think this is everybody. We've all failed for the wrong reasons, which is we didn't put in the effort.
Mm.
And that's when you feel that way. That's when you feel like failure. You
Yep.
feel like I didn't really do my job. I didn't show up when I should have. I did all the things. I went to
Yep.
every TA session. I showed up to everything. I asked all the questions. I put in the effort. And it
Yep.
was very clear that this was not my future.
This was a billboard, right?
And so, when you do the effort and you don't see success, that's just a clear guardrail to say, all right, don't do that.
Yeah.
And that's very liberating when you get to the point where you've put in the work, you've put in the college try, and it's not working out. That means you got to try something else.
Yep. I love that. I think that is such a great indicator, but it's also an important mindset, because I do think it's so easy to label yourself. I mean, I think people are much more likely to label themselves as failures before they'd label somebody else as failure, right? And to be able to say, okay, these are some of our guides here on what is in fact failure and what should be more direction change. So I love that. So when you've got somebody that's in that, maybe they're in the midst of, they just got feedback, or they just know in their inner knower they're experiencing their 13% moment,
Yeah.
right? Like that thing of like, I shouldn't be in the sales job anymore, or I shouldn't be trying to lead a team, or I shouldn't be managing numbers. What do you think? What's that first step, that next step? Again, I think in most cases, you're not recommending burn everything to the ground, quit your
Yeah.
job, move to Fiji, all those things. Like, if you want to move to Fiji, go for it. But like, what do you think? What's in the toolbox for, especially for that person that's just experienced one of those 13% moments?
I think one of the things that's both interesting and I think sometimes fun to do is there's this phrase from the South: you can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. It's
That's great.
it's very
Yeah.
hard to see your way out of your current situation, and
Yeah.
that's other people can help.
Yep.
One of the things I, recommend to people always is, ask some other people, where do you see my career going if that's the question
Mm.
at hand?
Yeah.
What what do you think my talents where should I be looking for the next move? Right?
Yep.
It might be directly up. I
Yep.
think people it's not. There's this misnomer out there that progress looks like going straight up.
Yep.
And I think that the people that zigzagged, they take, you know, equivalent level positions, even sometimes going a little backwards to get broader experience helps them figure out who they are and what they should be doing. And when you
Yep.
get these lateral experiences, you not only do you have a broader perspective that you can bring to the room every time, you sometimes stumble into a superpower you didn't know I had. This happened to me. I was 47 years old before I figured out what I should be doing in this life, at least for the second round. I was in a
Right.
meeting, and if you had asked me the day before, or even that day, would you be a public speaker for a living in the future? I would have said, of course not. I don't have laughed nervously and walked away. But I was in a meeting and I told the story in the meeting, and somebody in the room was like, "Oh, that you got to do a TED talk. Like you got to do a TEDx." And I was like, "That's never going to happen." He's like, "No, I'm
I
serious.
don't speak. That's not my thing, right? Yeah.
Standing on
Absolutely.
stage is nothing more terrifying than in the world to me. I'm not going to be doing that." He's like, "No,
Yeah.
just talk to the guy." So I went and talked to him, and he's like, "You got 6 weeks to prepare. I think you really should do it. And if you need
Wow.
help," and then I did it, and I was nervous for 10 seconds, and then I was completely in the flow state, and then I was like, "Wait a minute, that was awesome." And then people started hiring me, and my hourly rate for speaking is considerably higher than an hourly rate for consulting your business. Um, so it's a fundamentally better lifestyle. It's, really impactful. You get great feedback from people.
Yep.
You help people change their lives. It was the best thing
It's
I
a
could.
good gig, right? It's a
It's
good gig.
yeah,
Well, what I love about your story is you've lived this a number of times, right? It's not
right.
about quitting, but it is about experimenting. And even your story of being able to say, okay, you took some lateral moves
Yeah.
that somebody might even say, "Whoa, John, what's the deal? Are you kind of are you spinning out or you just wander around in the desert?" But there, like I think a lot of people are tempted to say, well, my rise to success has to be a straight line, and especially you do a lot of interviews as well, like almost every successful person that I've ever met has the most squiggled non-linear lines because they were willing to go and learn. Sometimes those experiences were forced upon them, but oftentimes they chose to have them, and when those laterals didn't necessarily you know, like play out exactly the way you thought, but they learn from them. And that's what you were doing each time. And I love that that even ushered you into this season of now being a speaker and going all over the world as a speaker, as an author, those kinds of things, because it's obviously in your sweet spot now in this season. Talk to me a little bit about that because I think that's one of the other things as we wrap this up. I don't want to wrap it up. As we wrap this up, I do think that there can be a seasonal component. I think some strengths
Hmm.
are for certain seasons,
Right.
and I think some strengths are for every season. But I think sometimes people are like, I don't know all my seasons or I don't know all my strengths. And I always say, like, well, some of them depend on the season you're in.
Yeah.
And I know it seems like that's been the case for you as well.
I totally agree. I was joking about this with my girlfriend the other day. Like, there's all these platitudes get cast about on social media, but the one that you'll never read is, "Oh, thank God my parents gave me everything growing up that's made me who I am." Right? Like,
That's right.
and it's always the stories of stress and failure and redirects.
Lack and setback. Yes, exactly.
Those are the stories that make people great. So we have to sort of expect that setbacks are a part of life, and that's what's going to make us grow and evolve. There's another, there's a quote that I like to tell when I speak, which is, "Most men live lives of quiet desperation." Just Thoreau. That's when you're stuck doing a job or an activity that's focused on your weaknesses all the time.
Yep.
The second half of the quote is, "And go to the grave with the song still in them." Don't let that be you, right? Like,
Yep.
find whatever that thing is, keep casting about. It's out there somewhere. Uh, and you might not find it this year, might not find it next year, but if you're not trying new stuff, you're never going to get there. And so
Yep.
I think taking those risks to reap rewards is ultimately what leads to a really fulfilling life. Getting that top level of Maslow's hierarchy of self-actualization for most people is not what got them there, right? They got
Yep.
there through narrow expertise, focus, discipline, risk avoidance. And for a lot of people, the last step is tumbling all the way back down. It is uniqueness, novelty, taking on risk, being creative. All the things that didn't get you there are going to get you to the next step. And that's what happens. You have to stumble back all the way to the bottom. I was couch surfing for 5 months when I started speaking because I didn't know the rules of the business and I didn't ask for 50% up front. People changed the date or canceled on me.
Right?
That's anymore.
Exactly right. Yeah, you have to learn, and that's also a part of that season thing too, of going, all right, I'm maybe not excellent at this in the beginning, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to commit. So, I love it. And again, we could keep going. I know they've got 1,000 other questions I want to ask too, but we'll wrap it up with 2 questions. One of which would be super simple. When people want to find out more about you, John, where's the best place for them to start?
It's easy. It's just johnkcoyle.com. So
Awesome.
Coyle. Everything is there. Blogs, videos,
The whole
links,
deal.
anything you could want. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. And we'll put all of that in the show notes too. We'll actually put a link to there's on the YouTubes there is your uh medal winning run, and it's a nail biter. It's a lot of fun to watch. So I love that. So let's wrap this up for the Dream Think Doer that's been listening, that they're like, okay, it's time for me to double down on my strengths. It's time for me to get back to more of a flow state more often, more strength-based work, and doing more of what I was put on the planet to do. What's that next step that you would recommend for them to take?
I do think it's to ask some other people that you trust. Get it, even like do it. I did it when I was going to do maybe do the speaking thing. I got like
Yeah.
6 7 people I trust. I made dinner, invited them over. They showed up, and then went to the room, and it was kind of fun because the very last person to go was a guy that knew me the best and also the most risk averse of everybody in the room. So I was kind of waiting for him, really,
Yeah.
and his answer, I still remember it. He looks around, he's like, hell yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it then.
Yep.
Because, when people can see you from outside in, they're going to be able to see that both the stumbling blocks and the opportunities for you. And if they say yeah to something, then you're probably doing the right thing.
Yep. I love that. Well, and I love that story, and I'd heard a little bit about that, that decision and leaning in, and I know you're a big fan of saying, hey, asking a few key people, like, what do you think are my strengths? What are those things that I could be working on, but what are my strengths? But I love that story because I'm guessing you were also very strategic with the people that were at that dinner party, right? Because I think when we ask about moving into our strengths and pursuing more of the dreams that are maybe on our heart, those big goals, those what might for some of our friends be scary goals as well, we have to be surgical with who we ask, because we need to ask those people that we trust, and we need to ask those people that know us truly, but we also want to ask those people that are they're going to have our best interests at heart. Because
Yeah.
I'm guessing you had probably some people in your network that didn't want you to be a speaker because maybe they wanted to be a speaker,
Yeah.
or they had goals, and it's like, who are you to go after those goals? So I'm guessing you had to be pretty surgical with who those 6 people were at that dinner table.
And make sure they're not all sycophants either, right? Because you got some yes people in your life, and they're great to be around sometimes, but that's not
Right.
what giving you advice about these big decisions.
That's exactly right. Well, John, thank you so much for living the life that you've lived. I love this conversation. We're going to have you back because I know we've got a lot more to talk about. But I so appreciate you bringing the gold, being generous, and being with us today.
We'll
Thanks,
talk
my
to you
man.
next week.
All right. I love it. Yes, we will, for sure. I love it.